Thank you for having me. It's been a long time coming. I've been looking forward
Yes.
to this moment and to talk to you and share with you ideas and what we suppose is what we can share together with with colleagues and friends
Yes,
about our personal
indeed.
experiences. So
And
I'm really happy to be here.
thanks, James. And just before even you go to anything, James, you're huge in Kenya. And if someone Googles you, the first thing that comes is trend. So I'm told that you started trend at Nation FM.
So the story of the trend starts way before I think actually the actual trend, or what people think what it is. In mid 2010 or thereabouts, there was sort of like an issue with how young people are presented on television. There was these barriers that was there with how people are represented. So the only people who could show up on shows were politicians, there were CEOs of parastatals, and hardly when other people showed up, it was them being interviewed outside the news set as news sources, as opposed to people with ideas and people with with a craft to share that sort of thing. So in those respects, then what we wanted to do was to give um, young people a space. Wanted to give creative an opportunity to be on television, and want our journalism to be broad based, and not something that is for a few people. So that's what we did. I spent almost a year pitching this story to management, that it is possible for us to have a space where it is first a different format, which is what people know the trend with. So I wanted to drop all the formalities that go with TV. Things like sitting behind a table, with a tie and a
Yes.
suit, and just interviewing politicians. So we want to interview a broad range of people. We interviewed, yes, politicians. We interviewed people at the center of the news. We interviewed controversial people, and the platform has been built that way so that everyone else can come and sort of bring in their expertise and their talent, and in the moment, and sort of use that platform to highlight that. And that's what trend is. So yes, I started it many years ago.
Yes.
It's something that I'm very proud of, and it's a place and a space that
Yes.
I think it shows what we can do with the power of imagination, a bit of imagination.
Mm. And you talked about talent, and I'll just go straight now to this talk. Lots of people kind of, mostly in Africa setup, they're kind of leaving talent and going into what I call uh, education, or maybe people spending more time into books and how to pass exams, and we forget about talent. Will you agree with that?
I think there is a pressure of young people to get into gainful employment. You'd understand that is a genuine concern for parents to have sort of these people that they're under your roof and you absolutely love them and adore them and you want them to be self-sustaining. And with that sort of time and pressure in life, what I suspect happens is parents will, because you don't know so much by the time you're 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, when you're in campus and that sort of thing. The parents play a significant role on what we do with our next life, our next chapter of life. It's that transition that I feel is what we're trying to sort of plug in. So is education a bad thing? Absolutely not. I think the best combination that we should have is an opportunity whereby you are afforded, and I mean going to having an education in sort of our space is a privilege in many ways. We still know that not many
Of course.
of us cross over from primary school to high school. There's a number that is dropped if we don't attain certain
Mm.
grades, and then from high school to university, if we don't attain certain qualifications, then you can't get to university. And then even if you get to university and you finish, then you still cannot get a job. So education is a privilege in our setup. What our situation has forced us to do and to be is to look for these marketable sort of skills, and then so like you have to go and study education, for instance, because there will be jobs. The days there will be jobs, now there are no jobs because government has not employed people for a long time. Go and study things that will get you employment. That is the mantra. That is what we are being sold for. I don't think education is a bad thing. I think that we should get all the education that we should get, but there is a place and space for talent. All right, this country, I think, has been built by artisans. It has
Right.
been built by people who would do woodwork and artwork and plumbers and with engineers and that sort of thing. And we have space and place for all these people. We have space and place for artists who do all manner of things, from drawing to carvings and that sort of thing. So art is a broad-based thing. Talent is something that is not only inborn but also can be educated and can be nurtured. And I don't think that is a process that is removed from the actual education. So we have to expand a bit on our version of what education is, so that we just don't say you have to be, academically inclined. Yeah, if we are to take you seriously. Not we know not all of us are aware like that. Not all of us want to be scientists. Not all of us, for instance, can do well in STEM classes and STEM disciplines, and not all of us also can do well in art disciplines, right? So we have to be
Yes.
be be honest enough with
And
what talent is and what it does for this country, what it does for all of us. And when I get to that place of where young people need to be, I think it's a process that we will get into, because it's a carry on thing from our parents. Our parents
yes,
are
yes.
wishing as well. They want as well. They want you to succeed. Just like if you have children, you want your children to succeed. And the best way they think for you to succeed is to offer you, an education if they can, and push you into a place whereby they think that it will sustain you. However, this push for you to sustain yourself in
That's,
many ways disregards the talent and the opportunity for skills that are not sort of university trained, if you like.
well, James, I want to move on, maybe from talent, where you've got, well, the privilege, as you are referring them to, you've got a stage where you already finished university, and now you're looking for work, you're looking for employment. And there has been a school of thoughts, and not just, and I'm not just referring to are kind of struggling to finding employable people. It's at job station now. We've got people that have been drilled to pass examination. Not necessarily people to have critical thinking, not necessarily people to work in a team, not necessarily people to show leadership skills. All we are, all we have been groomed. And look, I think I know who you are. I can kind of guess, and you know that older than me. But so this generation of you and I, we were kind of, we call ourselves microwave generation.
Yeah, you're right. I think some of us from campus, we struggled to get into the job market. I was in a class of 65 other students. I think progressively, the entry to the job market was difficult, because the things you're trained in class is not the things that you find on the ground. But also there is a bit of sort of education and handholding that doesn't happen, right? Of people who are ahead of you, showing you how to do simple things, how to, do your CV, how to, approach people, how to be in spaces where you can network and that sort of thing, and show people what your thinking and your new reasoning and your talent and expertise, because you're building it then, you don't know it. Because as soon as you finish school, whether it's college, campus, or whatever it is, what all you want to do is you want to get a job. So you are going to drop your CVs in 101 places, because all you're looking for is for a job, you know.
Yes.
And people don't tell you that it does not work like that. I mean, for some people, it works like that. They drop a CV and they get called. God bless them. The beautiful story. But for most of us, it won't work like that. For most of us, it is you get into a small place whereby a person, looks at you and believes in your ideas, the content of your character, the quality of your ideas, and says, "Look, young man, young lady, I think you have something here. Okay, so let me show you how to do this. Okay, write a letter to this person, come see them, share this idea with them, because I want to insist that it would be lying to people if we tell people that the world does not run on networking. All right, it would be a huge lie. People employ people they like. They do not necessarily employ people who are the most
Yes.
qualified, right? So you have to be in a place whereby your network allows you people to see what you have, because in any given day, in any given month, in any given year, there's people graduating with the same skill, the same certificate that you have from whatever university, from Harvard to Mount Kenya University. Hundreds and thousands of people graduating with the same qualification and knocking on the job market. There has to be something different with you, all right? And I think the first thing that is different with you is your ability to connect and network, improve on your network worth, I like calling it that, meeting sort of new people and sharing your ideas and trying to get into the job market with a difference, right? Not just getting a job. People just don't like giving people a job because it's a charity. That I'm really looking for a job. I'm really suffering. That happens. It's okay, but people are hoping that you bring some bit of difference. You bring a bit of oomph, a bit of you know uh, fire into the organization and that sort of thing, right? So in that respect, then I think that if there's one thing that you must get, I believe it is this skill of connecting with people, because people buy people at the end of the day.
And where do you get that? Where do I get that skill? And I think that's the nature of this discussion. That's what we're not being taught at school. So you and I, we're talking right now. I've never met you, or you don't know who I am, but here we are talking.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
this is what most people take for granted. That
Yes.
as you use the word, traditional means of how to get to work. But look, you and I were talking about right now. And so, where do we learn these networking skills, James? That's the
So
elephant in the room, isn't it?
I think there's few things that school will never teach you, and we focus so many things, I think, in school, and growing up in the IQ, intelligence quotient, right? How you can remember things, your ability to reproduce certain content, in certain setup. That's the intelligence quotient. It suggests you can, you are a reserve, of knowledge in that space. So it makes you good in certain things. You can reproduce either medical records, you can reproduce, calculations, you can reproduce literature and that sort of thing. That's the intelligence quotient. And there's been sort of like an enough percentage of people wanting that to be the thing that defines you as a human being. I think there are other things that we should develop, and I think we keep on developing these things. So we're never too late. I think there is an emotional conscience, the EQ, right? That of the soft skills that you're talking about. That how do I connect with people, all right? How do I be in a space and make people, understand my presence? Okay, not being pushy, not being, overbearing, but how do I do those things, right? How do I, like you say, talking right here and making the other person see that or feel that you're listening to them? What can I do for the other person to sort of connect with me? And this is the emotional, EQ, that something that we're never taught, but something that we have to build over time, right? We all have to spend a lot of time to build emotional quotient. The same time we spent, building the IQ, the intelligence quotient of I need to read the books, I need to, study, I need to pass my exams.
Yes.
The same way with the emotional, quotient. We need to practice these things. You need to practice things like, when you, I know now we're not shaking hands, but when simple things of when you're shaking hands, you look someone in the eye, it delivers things, all right?
Yes.
Simple things like when someone is talking, you listen to them and you wait for them to finish so that you just didn't jump into to interrupt them, right? So there's those things, how you stand, how you present yourself, how you make sure that you're not overbearing, you're not extending the conversation too much, you're not the only one want to be had in the room. There are
Yes.
those things that helps you to be in spaces where it's going to be beneficial for you, and those things I think are the ones that we should build a lot and build more. The other thing I think is I like to call it the adversity quotient. All right, our ability to withstand, terrible times and to suffer in a way,
Yes.
so that we don't look like we're in pain. Okay, because again, that famous phrase that says that um, you people don't like to be in adversity people want to be adversity stricken people, right? So we escape
Yes.
them. Yeah.
Yes.
If you look like you're in pain, you're in problems, we'll avoid you. All right, it's a human thing. All right, there's these stories of how the early humans were living, and they would literally move entire neighborhood. This is where they were living because someone is sick and they're dying. They don't want to be, you know, connected to that. So as soon as you start getting weak and sick, they leave you and they move the entire community to someone else because you're in a bad state, and it's a human nature not to
Yes.
want to be around people who are nagging, negative, or want to drag you down or look like they're struggling and suffering. Yeah, I know, it's aesthetics, but it's a human thing, right? So we need to understand that at whatever point in our life and our times, that if we project too much of these things that the human brain or humanity or how we be in spaces, and we translate that as someone who's adverse stricken, then you're going to avoid you, right? And we don't want that. So we need to develop those things that we know that how to share, or not to overshare your problems, when you meet people for the first time, how to, connect with people, how to have light conversations, how to pitch, all those things help you in those moments when you want to get to the job market. It's not that you become plastic or to change your personality, but it helps you to connect and with other people who are going to help you connect with other people, and that sort of thing. And so you build your network, and you get your first job, you get your job after that, and that sort of thing.
That's interesting, and I'm going to go back again to what you mentioned, or you talked about the ability to stand up properly, to shake hands, ability not to look sad. But where do we learn this from? Because as I said, I mean, there's no school that will teach this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I suppose my question to you is: so is the problem our parents then? Because these things were not taught, and James, as you said, people employ people that they like. It's not just because you're the best qualified, but they have to like you. So that likability, where do we get them from? Where do people learn them from?
I have a friend who kept on saying, there's a reason why light travels faster than sound. And it's like, look, by the time, have you ever been in a situation whereby you just see someone's face and you say, I know for sure I will never get along with this person, right? Does that ever happen to you? Precisely the same thing, right? That the first thing
Oh,
that,
well, that's interesting.
yeah, they didn't even have to say anything. You just looked at them and you're like, me and this person will never work, all right? Don't like them for no reason. They've not said anything.
No.
Yeah. And so this guy advanced his theory of light traveling faster than sound. It's like, look, the first thing is your appearance, okay? How you appear. There are people who appear naturally cold, they are closed up, and they don't know perhaps they're doing these things. They look sad and angry and unapproachable. Perhaps that's what communicates to us. So the next person is like, nope, I do not want to be
Yes.
around this person because they project these things. And maybe they know it, maybe they don't know. So we need to be self-aware, number one. All right. And number two, we need to know that, there are several things that you need to do and you can do to communicate these things that I am open, I'm approachable, all right? And the same way, I'm saying that, how we build our IQ by reading books, by going to the internet, by, finding mentors to help us understand formulas and, go to literature clubs and, read and, that sort of thing. We spend time to learn these things because the world has told us this thing is important for your growth, all right? But like I said, you have to spend time on the other end as well to build the emotional quotient, the EQ, which is these things that when you sit upright, that you don't want to fold your arms when you're in meetings, you don't want to close your legs, when you're in meetings and, in an open space, because it communicates the wrong thing. It does not say you're a closed person. Maybe you're nervous. There are things we do when you're nervous, like fidgeting, we do our hands like this, or, we bite our fingers.
Yes,
They're natural things that we do when we're nervous around new people,
yes,
all
yes.
right? And they communicate the wrong thing, okay? So we just need to be self-aware of these things. And like I said, the best way to do it is the best way we do with what we want to improve our intellect. We read books, we go to places where you can find this information. The same thing with this one. It doesn't come natural for no one, okay? Other people, yes, it's natural. They are born naturally, open, they can
Yes,
connect easily with everyone. But most people, I would argue maybe 80% of the population is not built like that. But you have to learn these things. You have to learn how to be, to be in a space and be
yes.
comfortable with other people and communicate without speaking openness, okay? So that people do not get the vibe that you're unapproachable, unless that's what you want to communicate.
That is interesting, James. And I'm going to try and move on now. I know time obviously is not a sense. Looking as a person, I mean, I know your story, and and because I know your story was from the internet, really. So, what is the role of a family when it comes to opportunities or employment? Because some of the, but we're living at a time. Well, I live in London at the moment, and I'm sure you went to school here, so you may identify with me that it's a very close society here, and some people are not very good in sharing things. So my question to you is, what is the role of a family when it comes to employment?
What is the role of who, sorry?
The role of the family.
Oh, the role of the family. Um, I think we at some point, we grow up and we start taking a bit more responsibilities ourselves. After your parents have done the fantastic job of feeding you, clothing you, and educating you for 18, 22 years. At some point we have to grow up and start taking responsibilities, right, of ourselves. And it happens to different people at different times. I think we have different curves in terms of
Mhm.
how sort of the human being and the human mind it develops. For others, it happens quite soon, quite early. They become
Yes.
self-aware. They start building bridges with other people because they realize that, look, um, at some point I'll have to be my own in my own world, right? And my folks are not going to be there forever. For others, takes a bit longer. So I think the first admission for me is to uh, sort of to make peace with our past, and we all have different pasts, with our family records and stuff. You have to make peace with it. Whatever it is that you cannot control, there's little for you to go ahead with and whine. All right. If you did not manage to get to certain colleges, which make it impossible for you to get to certain opportunities, there's little you could do with that when you're 18, 20, 21, 22, and you should stop whining about it. All right, it forms part of your story. We need to
Mm.
move on quickly. We need to figure out, so how do I get the next best thing? How do I get back to that school now that I can do something? I can work. I can whatever. I have worked for someone as a shamba boy so that I can make money for school, to go and, have
I know the
transport
story.
basically, so that I can go to school, and you have to do, so you have to do what you have to do, all right,
Mhm.
at
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
space where life has given you the opportunity to work. You have, two hands, two legs, your feet. Please, we have to stop at some point blaming our past and start
Yes,
focusing on
yes.
our future, right?
So when people
And
start whining,
sorry.
So when people start whining, for example, say that, I am like this because my family, made me behave this particular way. So so what you are saying is that happened, move on.
It does. It does. It's we all, like I said, we all have different things that we should complain about in our past. I'm sure even the prince has things to complain about his family. He left his family just the other day. Prince Harry, who would have thought that? So surely we all have something to complain about our families. There's something that somewhere in the back that someone could have done better. Could have taken to a better school, could have taken to more holidays. There are many things that people could have done, but it has not happened, and we are here. So what do we do? I say and I argue that we draw a line at the first chance where we can sort of have this awakening and this moment. Say, look, now moving forward, I'll create my world, and with my own image. All right, I'll use my strength. I'll do practical things to help me move forward. Because the thing that with what whining does, the things that complain that there's nothing to do, you can change it. So if your parents did not take you to good schools or places that you think that they could have taken and made you have better opportunities, so what? They didn't take you and you're now an adult. So what do we do? Should we whine? Should we kill them? What do we do? There's nothing we can do. So I particularly feel strongly about complaining things that we cannot change. It doesn't help anything. All right, it's possibly just my way of doing things. But I like, looking at things that I can change. What can I do now to make my tomorrow better? And I focus on those things. They give me, I think, a bit of something to wake up every single day because I realize I'm building a future, today, and tomorrow. Instead of 15 years ago, I could have gone to this school. 15 years ago, I could have
Yeah,
taken this
interesting.
opportunity and it didn't happen. If it didn't happen, didn't happen. We move on. It's part of our story. We'll tell it
Right.
sometime.
That's interesting, James. Now, I've got two last questions. I'll let you go. Question number one. You look quite cool and collected. So is that something you learned, or is it come with experience? Seeing right now, you're quite cool, and I've got to say, you've got an amazing voice too. Is that something you trained, or is that a gift? I mean, let's talk about your voice. Can you train that voice, or that's just the way you're born?
Yes and no. I think everyone has a beautiful voice. Everyone. We all have different, sort of vocal ranges, right? But I'll tell you about my voice. I went to school and literally the second year in my high school, I met this teacher called Mr. Otiato, and we are, in
Which
the
school is this,
shower.
James? Which school are you talking about?
St. Paul's, all right?
So what
Yeah.
school is this? What
St.
school
Paul's,
are you talking about?
yes, St. Paul's.
Okay. Ah,
Yes, St. Paul's in Kakamega.
yep.
So um, he says, um, this is I'm at from the second term in Form 1. He looks at me and says, you should join drama, all right? Drama club. And I'm like, well, of course. It sounds like a good plan. At this point, I have no idea what drama club does. I enjoy meeting people. I enjoy, being in stage and that sort of thing. So he's the drama patron and puts me in drama. And I start learning, all these things about stage management, presence and that sort of thing, and acting, and I loved it. So I become trained in drama, and this becomes part of my life for 4 years that I'm there. But then he tells me, and you must go and read news somehow on radio, all right, because you have a beautiful voice. Up to this point, no one had ever told me about my voice. I it was just like I know my voice like everyone else, and that's the earliest memory I have with with this voice thing. So he made me realize that it's possible for you to train any sort of vocal ranges uh, and and make something out of it. And he trained me. He's a lovely person. It's called Mr. Ochiato. We still are in touch. We talk, and he made me realize then that there's something that I have. And for me, I think this is perhaps something that maybe for people, who are in positions of mentorship and authority,
Yes.
that you can help young people realize the kind of difference they bring on the table. All right, we all are built differently, and we all have something to bring on the table. And
Mhm.
at the earliest opportunity, it will be very worthwhile if people who are ahead of us, people that we entrust with, our younger brothers and sisters, would help them discover the things they're good at, all right, or the things that they excel in, okay, or the things that they do better than everyone else, because we all have those things. And so it so happens that mine was this, and I took it up. It linked very well with what I wanted to do with myself, which was to tell stories. It linked very well with my own story in the background, and from there I just moved on. It
Yes.
became a thing that I did out of passion, out of love, but also I realized that I was good at, and I could be good at this thing even more. And so from the first year in Form 1, I was sure at some point I'll show up in someone's radio and TV. All right. I don't know how, but I did.
Goodness me. The last question from me, the power of the internet. So, so we're talking about some of those skills that you're mentioning. And again, there are some people that perhaps when they're growing up, nobody actually encouraged them or told them what they have that's good.
Yeah.
But now we've got internet comes to soft.
Look, it's a double-edged sword. I think that we have to create a new world, and our new world now belongs in the internet, belongs on phones, belongs in that's a fast screen. I feel that we have a better opportunity, not just in this country, I think in the continent, to change our future with how our future would look if we were to make partners with what the internet looks like. All right, we need to build first our own story. We need to tell our own story. We need to read about African kings and queens of the past. We need to read about cities in 1800, 1500, 1300, 900 BC. We need to read about our own heroes and mythologies, and because I'll tell you what that does. It gives us a sense that we are just not here because some people, somehow colonized us and put us in this space, which is a story that has been told for such a long time that we believed that we have no purpose other than being here right now and fighting all the poverty
Yes.
and the disease and that sort of thing. But we have a history, a very rich history, and we need to tell that story first on the internet because that will start giving us an opportunity to have a sense of worthwhile, and it's only then that we can build anything from there. So the first thing is we need to populate that internet with our own stories. We need to hear about how our artists in the year 1000 BC, we need to hear what was happening in this continent. When we discovered gold, and merchants would come from across the world to exchange the gold, with other things. And we had organized society and organized politics and that sort of thing. That still needs to be told first. If we're going to make sense of our own life moving forward in the next 10, 15, 20 years, that story has to be a story that we know of and a story that we believe in and tell our own mythology. We have to tell our own story, basically.
Wow. And James, today you announced that you're going to start your own podcast with NTV. So
Yes.
we'll be hearing this voice several times then.
Yes. No, it's an exciting project of leading the podcast sort of editorial of Nation Media Group. Nation Media Group is the biggest employer in Eastern Central Africa of journalists. It's in many countries. So there's no media group in this continent that comes from this continent that is in many countries. Nation Media Group. So I see that my role is to co-create content, help young people, the stories that we need to tell, the different formats that we need to experiment with, have that opportunity and have that platform. That's what I see my role in. Most immediately, I see that we can tell different stories in an editorial way that is not limiting, which means does not just fit on TV format and does not also just fit just on radio or newspaper and online, but something that breaks the barriers and goes far and beyond. And that's what we'd like to do. We'll experiment a lot. Excited about this opportunity. Excited that there would be a lot of co-creating content with young people and everyone else who's creating different content. and try to tell our stories in a way that is, passionate and engaging and immersive at the same time. So yeah, so it's a good place and a good space to be in.
Well, James, listen, I cannot thank you enough for your time and coming discussing with me about soft skills, which personally I think is very important when it comes to job search. I cannot thank you enough, dude, and I wish you all the best in your new role. And for sure, I'm sure we'll be talking again soon.
I think so too. I thank you very much for talking to me as well and having me. You've been a wonderful host, Kevin.
Oh, you're very kind, James, very kind. But thank you, and speak soon, James. Thank you very much.
Thank you.